Hey guys, and welcome back. Today is a homeschool video, and I'm sure you can tell from the title. I wanted to share with you some things that I have learned along my homeschool journey and how I would have done things a little differently when I was starting out. Now, this video is going to be geared towards my elementary student, my youngest son. I will be doing one that is geared more towards high school, so you can be on the lookout for that video. It will probably be my next video that I'm able to film. But today I wanted to focus on some things that I would change if I knew more about homeschooling when I started homeschooling. So for those of you who have been with us for a little while, hi, welcome back. For those of you who are new, my name is Rhiannon. I am a certified special education teacher who started homeschooling after the pandemic and just decided to stay with it. I have two boys, one is 16 and one is 9. My 9-year-old has been homeschooled since preschool. He was in his second to last year of pre-K when COVID hit. We had already decided that I was going to stay home that following year, and then COVID hit, and it just sort of felt like a sign that truly was the path for our family. My oldest son, Logan, who is 16, he actually went through the public school system all the way until mid-year in 7th grade. I'll give more of his story in my other video, but today I wanted to focus on things that I would have done differently with Kevin since he has always been homeschooled. So when I first started homeschooling Kevin, it was the fall of 2020, and I had no idea what I was doing. I did have some friends who homeschooled, and a lot of them just recommended just playing and waiting, not really starting anything particularly structured. However, the daycare that Kevin had been in really had done a great job of starting some of those early pre-K skills, and I felt that he was ready to start some structured lessons. Since I wasn't familiar with curriculums or anything like that, I really took my time in researching which curriculum we wanted to start with. And so for us, that meant that we did not start with a formal curriculum until about mid-year, about December 2020. Before that, what I focused on was pulling our state kindergarten standards and designing activities and reading books, watching YouTube videos that addressed each of those standards in all of the academic areas. The first thing that I would have changed had I been more aware of homeschooling or had I known a little bit more is I absolutely would not have started a history or science curriculum in any way, shape, or form during those first years. Personally, what I have learned over the last almost 5 years now of homeschooling is that when our kids are little, and I believe especially for boys, the two main things that I would have focused on would have only been phonics and math. Now, I won't say that I feel like I made a mistake doing science and history with Kevin when he was younger. What I think I ended up doing was putting a lot of unnecessary pressure on myself to make homeschool look a little bit more like a school day, or to follow along with the standards that I was so used to teaching. So honestly, I would have dialed it back. Whether we chose to use a curriculum right away or not, I absolutely would have only stuck with structured lessons in phonics and math for at least those first 2 to 3 years. Probably pre-K through first grade would have been where I only sat down for structured lessons in phonics and math with him. Science is one of those things that is quite fun at this age. And if you want to do science, science can really be addressed through outdoor play, nature studies, building things, Legos, car tracks, towers with like toilet paper tube towers for cars to race down and do gravity and stuff like that. Or we would have done more like what if science experiments. We would have done the volcano with the vinegar and the baking soda and different experiments, super fun, easy ones that you could have found on Pinterest. In retrospect, I would not have worked with a specific science curriculum at that age. Again, nothing wrong with it. I think science should still be addressed, but I would have addressed it more through play or through reading or videos than through doing a structured science curriculum. That would have freed up more time for play, honestly, because when we think of little boys especially, but little kids in general, most of their learning is done through play. And so the more bookwork that we are putting in front of them, the less playtime they have. The same thing goes for history. We did not use a history curriculum. We did just choose to read biographies. So that's a positive thing that I think I would have carried through if I were to start homeschooling all over again, knowing what I know now, then I definitely would have continued that as far as addressing history just through reading books, picture book biographies. We've done a lot with picture book biographies, and honestly, that is some of the best information that Kevin still retains to this day. And the great thing about picture book biographies is when you're reading that biography, you're also addressing that time period. You cannot read about George Washington without addressing the Revolutionary War and the creation of America. So that is definitely something I wouldn't have changed. But honestly, I was so worried about him missing out on different subjects without even thinking about how repetitive our public school curriculums are, especially in elementary school. I would not have done a science curriculum in any way, shape, or form. And I really would not have focused much on history outside of its read aloud time, its snuggle on the couch time. I would have focused on phonics and math at least through first grade. Another thing I think I would have changed if I were to do my homeschool journey with Kevin over is I would have leaned a lot more into resources that I already had that I did not really use fully to like their greatest extent. So, for example, we have used the Good and the Beautiful curriculum since he was in preschool. We started their kindergarten curriculum halfway through his preschool year because he was ready for it. And we have actually stuck with them. The first year that we used it, it really wasn't my favorite. The lessons seemed a little long and wordy. But during that year, Good and the Beautiful actually revamped their curriculum. And so the newer version of it, which it has been the newer version for a few years now, but the newer version of it is so much more kid-friendly, in my opinion. The lessons became a little bit shorter. They were a little bit more focused. And we just did better with it after they revamped it. However, what I would have done is I would have leaned into other things that I was already paying for a little bit more. So, for example, we are Read Aloud Revival Premium members. I love Sarah McKenzie's approach to family book clubs and fostering a love of literature and reading with your kids. Not having it just be like read and comprehension questions. And so as a premium member, we also get monthly lesson plans essentially for a different book. She actually has one for picture books, and then she has one for like a family novel that takes the place over like 3 months. So there's a picture book every month, and then the novel is like every quarter. But embedded within those lesson plans are art, geography, writing, handwriting, grammar, sensory stuff like food and things like that. Music is involved in a lot of them. And really, until recently, I did not fully lean into that as a literature curriculum. So if you are paying for something online or any kind of subscription that is a homeschool thing, I would recommend going through and making sure that you are using that curriculum to its fullest. This year, we have decided to take a little break from IEW as a writing curriculum. I do love IEW, but after doing it for a year, we were a little bored. And it teaches a very specific set of skills. And I was noticing Kevin was weaker in some other areas that IEW really doesn't address, namely kind of creating stories, coming up with ideas, and seeing a story through completion. So we decided to take a break from IEW for the rest of this school year, and I am really leaning into the writing, grammar, and literature aspect of our RAR premium lesson plans. Now, the great thing is these things are free. Well, I mean, technically they're paid for, but there's not an additional expense. They are very flexible. And while it gives you the basics, it also allows you for remediation or for, moving ahead, or even just to take things at your own pace. One of the things that we are learning about this month is possessives in grammar. And so we had a really great lesson about it. There were some just different references to it in our lesson plans through RAR, but I took it a step further. I found some free practice things on Teacher Pay Teacher, and we've really just mastered possessives in like a week. And so it's been a great thing. Yes, it might take like a tidge more work because I did have to go look for some more practice things on Teacher Pay Teacher, mostly because I didn't think I was creative enough just to pull stuff out of my head. But at the same time, I am fully utilizing a resource that I've already paid for instead of adding more things on. And that for me is where I tend to kind of get lost in the weeds. I want to make sure that I'm covering everything. And so instead of looking at what I'm already doing to see, is there a way that I can address something without adding something, I have a tendency just to add more. That is a terrible choice for Kevin. Kevin gets overwhelmed. And when Kevin gets overwhelmed, he just doesn't do anything. He doesn't fight me. He doesn't talk back. He really doesn't pitch a fit. He just sits there and shuts down. And so knowing that about my kiddo, I have to really rein my impulses in to, well, let's just add something instead of how can I replace something, or how can I create an extension activity for something we're already doing so that I'm not necessarily adding a whole other layer. I'm just creating an extra pathway in the road we're already traveling. And I think finally, the last thing that I would have changed about starting homeschool, and even I'm continuing to work on this now as a mom, is including more time for just play and natural discovery. I am very focused when it comes to completing our school day. I want to get in, we have our lesson plans, I want to check those boxes, I want to finish it. And I want to do that, and I often even say to Kevin, okay, well, when we're done with this, then you can go play. While I do think that he needs to learn a work first and then play mentality because that will serve him as he grows up into adulthood, I also am trying to honor the fact that he is still a kid at heart. And so I'm trying to do better about giving breaks, about including play, almost even scheduling it in our day sometimes. Because for me, it's very easy to say, Nope, these are the things we need to get done. We have to get them done no matter what. I don't like to not complete a to-do list. I'm very ADHD and I sort of live and die by my to-do list. I'm very task oriented. I'm very goal oriented. I am not a great people person. And so with that, I have to remember that what works for me as an adult and what I've developed over my lifetime is very different as far as the needs of my kid. And so it's something that I'm continually working on. But I would say, as I had started homeschooling, I wish I would have made more time for play and made that part of our lessons versus trying to fit it in. So if you're ever feeling like, oh gosh, we finished so early and my kids play too much, they really don't. They definitely don't. Play is truly part of homeschool. Daily chores are part of homeschool. Helping around the house, doing things to help the family. That really is part of homeschool. And I think we forget that, especially if you grew up going to public school or if you grew up in any way just not being homeschooled. And also, I think sometimes we fall into that comparison trap. I don't know about you guys, but it's always my favorite thing when people try to like grill my kids. Like, what are you learning about? What are you doing? What grade are you in? Stuff like that when they find out they're homeschooled. And so I always sort of have that like moment of panic, like, oh God, are we doing what we're supposed to be doing for third grade? Instead of remembering we chose to homeschool our kids because grade levels are stupid and it matters that do they get the knowledge that they need to be a functional adult in the world. I always sort of still pull and like draw on that moment of panic. And then I go, no, you know what? Like, we're doing great. I'm not worried about it. Whether we are on grade level with what a state says or, a Department of Education says, I always have to remind myself those are people that have not been around children in years. And so they really probably don't know what they're talking about. But I definitely would have included more play. So if you are thinking about starting your homeschool journey or new to homeschooling, I hope that this gives you a little bit of reassurance and motivation. What you're doing really isn't wrong. Even doing nothing sometimes can be the right choice depending on the season you're in and depending on the age of your children. When they're little bitty, like, take it easy, play with them. Those are memories that they are going to love. Those are things that they will remember. My mom got on the floor and rolled cars with me or played Legos with me or whatever. They'll remember that more than any lesson you ever teach them. But also remembering that our kids are so smart. And whether they have learning disabilities or not, they will come to things in their own time. And I truly do believe that. I truly do believe that kids are sponges. They are always learning no matter what we put in front of them. And that a lot of times these sit-down tasks that we do with our younger babies, it's more for our validation than it is for their learning. So if nothing else, when you start your homeschooling journey, if you have younger kids, especially like pre-K, kindergarten, first grade type, I would work on phonics, I would work on math, and I would read all of the books about every subject that your kid is interested in. And other than that, I would play and I would have a great time with them. We'll talk to you soon.